Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'd like to thank you for joining us on our presentation on 3D Experience with 3DX CATIA and SOLIDWORKS. Oftentimes, we find ourselves collaborating and designing on different CAD softwares, forcing us to convert data in order to bring them into a singular platform. 3D Experience provides the ability to work with data coming from multiple authoring softwares on a single platform. Today, we will be focusing on how parts and assemblies designed in SOLIDWORKS can be integrated into an assembly from within the 3D Experience platform, with data primarily built in 3D Experience CATIA, and some even coming from CATIA v5-6. Today on our agenda, we will start out with a quick introduction on our presenters, as well as a brief slide deck on who is GoEngineer. Then, we'll get to the meat and potatoes of our webinar, starting out with modeling the data in SOLIDWORKS using CATIA references, then integrating that part into a 3D Experience CATIA assembly, making edits to the SOLIDWORKS data and creating an assembly, and then finally updating the 3D Experience CATIA assembly with the assembly created in SOLIDWORKS, creating a change action to release the data, and then checking the data using BI Essentials. A little bit about me. My name is Tim Ramos. I am a Senior CATIA Specialist with GoEngineer, based out of Denver, Colorado. I graduated from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in 2014 with a degree in Mechanical Engineering and Materials Science. Afterwards, I worked with Honda R&D, designing upper body of vehicles, focusing on advanced surface design. In 2018, I transferred over to the Application Engineer realm and have been focusing on all things related to CATIA v5-6 and 3D Experience CATIA. In my free time, I enjoy outdoorsy things like snowboarding, rock climbing, camping, and spending time with my dog. And with that, I will now turn it over to my co-presenter, Stephen Darcy.
Hi guys, I'm Steve Darcy. I received my mechanical engineering degree from UALR, and for the past 12 years, been working and living in Austin, Texas region for GoEngineer as an elite applications engineer. My colleagues would say I'm an expert in 3D design, so I'll take their word for it. I really like modeling things and making them real. I like robotics, automation, Arduinos, computers, software, 3D printing, and I run quite a bit just to stay fit, but mainly anything techie and nerdy. Who is GoEngineer? We are the #1 technical resource worldwide for SOLIDWORKS and Stratasys products, and we have a very strong software portfolio for all your engineering and manufacturing needs. We have a lot of locations nationwide, which means better sales and support for you guys. On average, tech support's about a 12-hour day for your locations. If you're in Central Standard Time, this means 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Pacific Standard Time is 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Anyway, we're big on training, services, and tech support. On the hardware side, we sell and support the best 3D printing technology out there for production use. Our main products are PolyJet and FDM printers by Stratasys, and we also carry other products for dental and stereolithography printing. If you need to print in metal, we also carry Velo 3D for your larger parts and Exact Metal with a less expensive entry point and build size. For both, these can print metals like titanium, aluminum, copper, tool steels, and more. For reverse engineering and inspection, we carry a wide array of 3D scanning products, which can have an accuracy of 0.01 millimeters, which is 0.0004 inches. That's 4/10,000ths. We also carry the Arctic 3D series, which include the Leo, shown here, and the Creaform HandyScan series, and the Peel brand with the $8,500 entry point and accuracy of 0.25 millimeters. All of these software, hardware, training, and services information can be found on our website, so you should go there often. We update it a lot. You can also log into the GoEngineer customer portal to create, edit your own tech support cases, look up SOLIDWORKS serial numbers, pay your bills, get quotes, and also access the knowledge base and community and forums. On the software side, most of our business is selling and supporting SOLIDWORKS for design software, but we also sell, train, and support the CATIA line of products. If you want simulation, we have SOLIDWORKS Simulation and Simulia, which support offerings for statics, dynamics, and flow simulation. On the manufacturing side, we have SOLIDWORKS CAM and CAMWorks, and on the Delmia side, we offer an entire suite of products that not only include CAM, but also shop floor software and optimization. For PDM PLM, we have SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard, Professional, and Managed PLM. And on the CATIA side, we carry the Innovia line of software, which can be installed on-site or on cloud, which is built into the 3D Experience platform. Digging deeper into the design software, SOLIDWORKS has a desktop version, and then we also sell SOLIDWORKS Connected, which is the typical desktop SOLIDWORKS software, but the files are managed on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. And likewise, on the CATIA side, we have CATIA V5, which is a desktop solution, and then we have the newer interface of 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA, which does have a local installation, but saves and manages everything directly to the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Today, demoing will be made up of me on SOLIDWORKS Desktop and Tim Ramos on 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA. Also, I wanted to highlight the 3DEXPERIENCE apps we'll be using today. On the SOLIDWORKS side, we have typical SOLIDWORKS Desktop license, and then we've also added on UES, which is Collaborative Designer for SOLIDWORKS app, which runs as an add-in inside of SOLIDWORKS and connects us to the cloud platform. UES also contains IFW, which is Collaborative Business Innovator, and CSV, which is Collaborative Industry Innovator, which also have some more apps that we'll be utilizing. On the CATIA side, we'll be using MDG, which is Mechanical Designer, which also includes part design and assembly design. For the most part, we'll be sticking with assembly design. And Mechanical Designer also has CSV, which is Collaborative Industry Innovator, and we'll be presenting some of the apps like 3D markup, issue management, collaborative lifecycle, and change execution. All right. So let's get on to modeling in SOLIDWORKS using a CATIA reference. So here I am in 3DEXPERIENCE platform, and I've made a new tab on my dashboard for tasks. So I'm going to create a new task, and I'm just going to say that I need to model a new cover for a new transmission. And these are pretty much like a to-do list. And you'll notice when it creates the task, it's in the to-do list. So if I'm ready to start working on it, I can move it to end work. And there we go. And now I'm ready to do some work. First, I need to find a part that I need to work on. And so you can kind of see I've got a pretty cool motorcycle here. And I've got a cover that's missing. So I'm going to model up that cover in SOLIDWORKS. But I'm going to reference some of the information from the CATIA model. So I'm going to open up that part just in its own tab here. So that looks pretty good. And I need to get some information from it. I'm not good with part numbers and stuff, so I'm just going to grab the title here. You'll notice the name or the part number there. And now we can go right into SOLIDWORKS. And I'm just going to start from scratch with a new part. Let's go ahead and change the units over to millimeters. And I need to reference that part file, so let's go ahead and just paste that in there and hit the magnifying glass. And this is searching the cloud, the platform, for that file. And there it is. It's A.3. So let's go ahead and drag and drop that in to SOLIDWORKS. And this is a part file, so it's doing a derived part. So a part inside of a part. And you'll see we get the exact geometry. So we have all the surfaces and faces and things like that. Looks like I got a couple surfaces. I'm going to turn those off. So we'll just hide those. Looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and hit the save button. So you'll notice it gets the next available part number from the cloud. So I'm just going to save this to 3DEXPERIENCE. SOLIDWORKS is a desktop software, so it's going to save it to my desktop and then, of course, sync it to the cloud. So we'll save that out. And the reference part right here is not editable, but I do want to show you that this does exist on the C drive. It is a CAT part file, and it does have a revision and everything like that on my local machine. So I do have some reference geometry on my machine that I can look at. All right, we're just going to create a new sketch on this face, and we'll use the convert entities command and just do an extrude, boss extrude. We'll go and make that 40 millimeters. I'm not going to merge the result because I want this to be just the cover on its own. And then I'll pre-select that edge so I can get the fillet command, and we'll just change that to 25 and hit OK. Next, I need to offset this surface up at the top. I'm going to create a secondary body, and you'll see this 8.5 millimeters throughout. It's almost kind of like I'm doing a shell, but manually, just because I have some other geometry that I have to do. So I'm going to just pick all these faces, and I'm using a 3D space mouse, so I can rotate with my left hand and pick with my right. And those are offset surfaces to the inside. So I'm going to turn that off so you can kind of see what that looks like. And then I'm just going to sketch on the inside of this. I need to select all these holes. And again, I'm using the convert entities. There we go. So we'll just say okay. And I'm just going to extrude cut those through the entire solid. Let me flip that. And one thing I typically do is select the solid that I always want to cut through, just so it doesn't try and auto-select something separately if I rearrange the features. All right, kind of doing the same thing, create a new sketch on the very top face of that. Just gonna make a bunch of circles, center them on the center of that, make them all equal. Let's put a dimension on it. And we're gonna extrude cut that into the part, and we'll just do that blind at 27 millimeters. And again, I'm just gonna cut that single solid body and hit okay. So it's looking pretty good. Let's just add some little fillets to make it look a little bit better. Again, here's where the space mouse really kind of is in very handy. We're going to just kind of rotate and pick, rotate and pick, rotate and pick. All right, next we're going to work on the inside of this part. So I'm going to select tangency on the inside edge of that. And I'm going to extrude this up to that surface that I offset earlier. And I needed to do the offset surface earlier just because it didn't have the holes and all that kind of stuff in there. So turn that surface off so you can see what that looks like. Looks pretty good. I have to cut some holes in there just for the offset on the holes. So I'm going to turn on the previous sketch for those. And let's just do it again, an offset 8.5 millimeters. And I'm just going to draw a bunch of circles. And then we'll select them all. I missed that one, so let's control select. And we'll make those all equal. And then I'm going to extrude cut those. Let me turn on this other solid though, because I want to offset this from this face. So I'm going to pick that face and offset it, again, 8.5 millimeters. And it looks like it's going the opposite direction. So let's flip it and we'll say okay. And I only want to cut that solid body. And I'll pick that out of the tree. It's a little bit easier to pick. So now I have two solids on. One for the actual cover and one for that subtraction. So we'll just do a subtract on the combine command. And if we rotate the round, kind of looks like it's shelled out. So we'll add some fillets on here, make it look a little bit better. And again, we'll use our 3D space mouse. That looks pretty good. And one more set of fillets. And I'm going to do this in a separate feature just because I may decide to change the fillet size a little bit later. All right, so we're done with that. Next, we're going to rotate this over, pick on the top. I want to put a logo, the GoEngineer logo on here. So I'm just going to create a new sketch, and I have that as a block in the design library. So I'll just drag and drop that in. And I need to rotate that 90 degrees. So we'll flip it, and I'm just going to plop it in there for now. And let's extrude it. 2 millimeters looks good. Just combine it to that solid and hit OK. And that's looking pretty good. Pretty much done with the modeling part. Let me close out of the search. And you can see my file there with the part number. And I'm going to rearrange my windows and put my tasks over on the left-hand side. SOLIDWORKS is still over on the right. And I'm done with my modeling for the cover, so I'm just going to drag and drop that into completed. And then I'm going to create a new task for Tim. So I'm going to tell Tim he needs to add that cover to the assembly, to the CATIA assembly, and check for interferences. So I'll create that. I'll set the priority. And then I need to add the attachment. The cool thing is I can just drag and drop it from SOLIDWORKS. So just drag and drop it right in the attachments. And that way he doesn't have to go find that file. It's automatically in there on that task. So there it is. I forgot to add him. So make sure that you assign whoever you want to do that task to it. So we'll save that. And we're good to go. All right, I'll close out of the task. I did forget to do one more thing. If he inserts that into CATIA, he has two solid bodies there. He has the original transmission case. So I'm going to do a delete body on that. So now I just have one solid body in there. and Tim should be good to go.
While logged into my 3DEXPERIENCE browser interface, I notice that I have a notification. In my notification, I see that Darcy has assigned me a task, and I click on it to open that task. On the left, we have our options for moving the maturity state of our task from to do to in work to completed. And while clicking on our task, we have the information associated with that task. So here I see that my task is to add the cover to the assembly and check for interferences. And I see here that there is an attachment to the part so I can open it directly from this task. So I'll first start by taking this task and moving it from to do to in work as I begin my work on the task. Then navigate down to the attachments and choose to open the part using Assembly Design in 3DEXPERIENCE Native Apps, which is my locally installed authoring software, powered by CATIA. We see that directly from this prompt, my locally installed software is loaded and opened. And we see that Darcy's model has been successfully opened in 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA. Now I will go and apply this part to the assembly as per the task. First, search for the assembly that I want to add it to, using our full text search. And I will take the result and right-click and select Open to open it in a data-heavy, authorizable environment. First, I want to take my crankcase part and apply it to its own subassembly. So I'm going to add a new subassembly into my root by right-clicking on the root, choosing Insert, and then selecting a new product to insert. I'll rename the product Case Assembly. We'll then add that subassembly to my root. I will next take this crankcase part and copy paste it into my newly created assembly. Next, I will go and take Darcy's part that he created in SOLIDWORKS and add it to my crankcase assembly. So I'll do that by right-clicking on the subproduct and then choosing Insert, and instead now choosing Insert Existing Product. We see a little filter icon appears, letting me know that I'm ready to go and select which parts or subassemblies I want to insert into this subassembly. I'll tab over to Darcy's part and select it. And we see that it is inserted, with giving me the option to preliminarily position it. Now that I've preliminarily positioned the part, I'm going to apply some engineering connections, or assembly constraints, to position the part. I'll first set a contact constraint between the part and the part that I've placed into the crankcase assembly. Next, I will apply a coincident constraint on some corresponding radii to position this part more accurately. So after positioning the case cover onto my case assembly, I notice that there is a clear interference that needs to be remedied. So first I will go and save this subassembly and its child parts to my database, so then I can perform subsequent work on this subassembly and the child parts. So first I'm going to create a markup against this to highlight the interference. And I'll do that by searching my 3D markup app. We see that the widget or the app has been opened in my browser interface. So searching on the assembly in my browser interface, I'm able to find the result and add it to my 3D markup widget by simply dragging and dropping it into the widget. And we see that the product is opened, showing the interference. I'm going to go and create a new markup against this. So I'm going to use a couple of my markup tools to highlight this interference. And now that I've created this markup, I can create an issue against this markup and then assign Darcy to the issue to remedy it. So in my toolbar, I'll click Generate Issue, and here I'll give it a unique name, and I'll title it Fix Interference. And here I can choose to provide some input for a resolution, and I can go and add in some attachments here, one of them being the markup. If I choose, I can add another item, and I can add in, let's say, the case assembly for reference. Then I can go and choose to immediately start the issue and forward a notification to Darcy with this information. Now you may have noticed that I did not add Darcy to that issue management. I can simply remedy that by going to Issue Management and editing it. After I edit it, I can choose to add a member. And by clicking on the Add Member icon, I can find Darcy in my database and add him as an assignee. And now he will receive that notification letting him know that he has been assigned to this issue. And then he will be able to see the attachments and all of the pertinent information to help him solve this issue. And finally, I'm going to go over to my task management. I'm going to take the task of adding the cover to the assembly and checking for interference from in work to complete, because I have added that cover to the assembly and have checked for interferences.
All right, so let's go check our messages. So I just hit the little bell, and you can see Tim has completed the task that I gave him. And you can see it's already been moved over to my completed pile over there. And he's also assigned an issue to me. So I'm going to just click on that. And it's called Fix Interference. So I need to increase the clearance of the case cover to the surrounding geometry. So I can go to the Contents tab, see what's under that. The attachments, looks like he has a 3D markup and the assembly that goes to. So let's just open that up with 3D markup. Give that a little time to load. So you can see the subassembly that he placed my SOLIDWORKS cover in. And you can see that we've got some of the engine that's just coming right through there. So I've got to fix that interference in my model. So let's go back to my issues management. And I'll just double click on that to open it up. I don't really exactly know where that subassembly is. So I'm going to open that with an app called Relations. And Relations shows you the relations. To the right is going to be the children, to the left is going to be the parents. So I'm going to find the top level assembly that goes in. So you can see it goes into an assembly and then a top level assembly. So I'm just going to pick on that and open that up with assembly design. So it's going to open that up in CATIA. So we'll give that a minute. And I don't know a whole lot with CATIA, but I do know how to do a section view and also use the measure tool. So let's zoom in there. I can really see that interference pretty easy. So I'm going to go over to the Tools tab and do section view. And I'll switch that to the Y direction and just drag the arrow. So I'm dragging through there. And then we'll zoom in and I'm going to do the distance or measure tool. And we'll pick on the two faces. And I've got about 21 millimeter clearance. And the part's already about 20 or 30. So I need to make that probably 80 would be a good recommendation on that. So straight from CATIA, I'm going to go ahead and do Design with SOLIDWORKS, which is going to open up SOLIDWORKS. And in SOLIDWORKS, I've been working on some embossed client logos. Just individual parts that I can put into an assembly. So you can see I've got one for GoEngineer, one for Dassault, I've made one for SOLIDWORKS. And so that way we can substitute that out and not have to do a full casting tool for each client. So what I'm going to do, let's back up the part a little bit on the feature tree. And I'm just going to delete the logo that's in there. And we're just going to sketch on the front face and just draw a square box and give it the proper dimensions for the logo art. Looks good. And then we'll just do a cut. So we'll go to features, extruded cut. And I'm just going to extrude it in about 1 millimeter. So that way they'll stick out just a little bit, make them look cool. But I do need to add some fillets. So we'll put the fillets in. And that way, if we need to change out the customer logos, we can just change out one part. And it's a lot cheaper than making an entire mold for that housing. So that's done. Let's go ahead and change that dimension to 80 millimeters. And then we'll update it. So that should give us plenty of clearance on the inside. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and go to the feature tree. And we'll drag that down to the bottom. So it looks like we're done with that. I want to save this as a new revision. So I have a button for that. So just hit new revision. We can add a comment. So I just want to add the nameplate. And so now when I save it out, notice that instead of A.1, I have an A.2. So if anyone wanted to go back in and look at A.1, then we do have a complete history trail on that. All right, so next I'm going to add a new assembly and put the part in the assembly. And let's go ahead and add in just one of the logos. So we'll put the GoEngineer logo in first. And I'm just going to add some mates, make that coincident, another coincident mate, and one more. And that'll fully define it. So it looks like it fits perfect. Let's go ahead and save that out. And I'm just going to hit save to 3DEXPERIENCE. And that way it grabs the next available part number. And all I have to do is add a title. So I'll go ahead and just call it the crankcase. And this is the assembly. So if I look at the relationships in the browser tree over here, then you can see the crankcase, I can see the subcomponents, and I'm pretty much done with them. So I'm just going to run those through a workflow. So I'm going to change them from the private to a frozen maturity state. And so then that way they're kind of in an approval state. And whoever's approving can either move it back to in work or they can move it to released. All right, let's go ahead and rearrange the windows. And I'm going to, on the left-hand side, I'm going to go back to my issues, issue management. And I want to add the crankcase assembly to that issue because now the issue is affecting that as well. So we're going to have Tim change out the part to an assembly, but now he can find my assembly very easy because it's attached to the issue. So I can also add a comment. So I'm going to say, hey, Tim, we've made a change to the part and added it in an assembly so we can switch it out. The client logos, I've added all parts to the issue and we'll send that. So he'll get a notification too. Now I probably should have set this to in work earlier before I even started. But we can do it now. And then, of course, Tim's going to be the approval. So I'm going to set it to approval, and then he'll get that notification.
So while looking at my web app browser interface, I check my notifications and see that Darcy has changed the maturity of the issue to in approval. Clicking on that link opens up the issue, and I'll check that Darcy has made a comment saying that he has made a change to the part and added an assembly, giving us the ability to switch out the client's logos. He's added all parts to the issue. So I go and check the attachments and see that the assembly is indeed there. So I'll highlight the crankcase assembly and open it and select my assembly design app. And next, the web apps will launch my native apps, my locally installed software, and open up the crankcase in 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA. So next, I will open up my case assembly so that I can replace the current crankcase cover with the new assembly that Darcy has created. And to do that, I'll just right-click on the old data, choose the replace option, and choose Replace by Existing. And I'll see that my filter symbol has appeared, so I can then go and click on the crankcase. And we'll see that the crankcase has been successfully applied to the assembly. And go and save that data to commit that change. And next, I'm going to open the rear wheel assembly to recheck for that interference. Here we see the rear wheel assembly, and we see that new crankcase assembly or subassembly added to it. And we can see just on the surface level, or just initially even, that the interference has improved. But I'll use my clipping tool real quick and check that we have indeed fixed that interference. And just running this section through, we can see that there are no issues for the interference. Now that the assembly has been verified and that the interference is indeed fixed, we are ready to go and release this data. And the way that we're going to do that is with a change action. The change action initiates any change in your data, and it can be for various reasons, whether it be to revise or modify, or in our case, to release the data. So I'm going to go over to my change execution app within my 3DEXPERIENCE native apps, and I'm going to create a change action against this assembly. Now, before I go and create this change action, I will note that we could have created the change action against the issue that Darcy raised, but we're just going to create the change action simply to reflect the release of this data. So before I do that, before I create the change action, I'm going to go and change Darcy's issue from in approval to completed. We see that has indeed been moved to completed. Toggling back to my native apps, I'm going to create this change action. As we can see, we can add members, myself as the owner, and since I'm the only one releasing this data, I'm going to make myself also the assignee, as well as the approver. And we see my roles have changed on the change action. Now I'm going to go and add a proposed change. I'm going to search for my crankcase assembly. Then I'll choose which operation I want to perform on this assembly. It's going to be to modify, and the activity is going to be change maturity to release. Here we see we have added that proposed change into our change action. Now currently it is in draft, so I'll change it to in work. Then from in work, I'll go and set it to in approval. And in other change actions, if there were other assignees, they would get a notification that they've been assigned to a change action. They would go and make those changes. I would see that they would have set it to in approval, and then I would, review that change action and make sure that it was applied correctly. And we see that it has been moved to in approval. And at this point, while it's in approval, as the approver to the change action, I need to go to the Approvals tab and review the task to sign off on it. So here I have the option to make a comment, and then I have the option up here to either approve or reject or abstain. In the case of abstain would be if there were multiple approvers and it didn't necessarily need my approval to go through the approval process. I could choose to abstain, or I could choose to reject it and send it back to the assignee. But I'm going to go ahead and approve. So we see now that the maturity state of the change action has been moved to complete. And just to further show this point, I'm going to open up the full motorbike assembly and show that this has indeed been moved to released. And we can check this using a number of methods. One of them being to check the properties window of the data from the tree. And we can check that by right-clicking and going to Properties. And scrolling down in our Reference tab, we can see that that data has been released. However, in 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA, there's this tool known as BI Essentials. BI Essentials, which stands for Business Intelligence, gives you different metrics of your data and color codes them both in 3D and in your tree. And so we can check the design status or the maturity status by checking the design state in BI Essentials. We'll see when I click this, you'll see the parts are indeed color coded both in our 3D as well as in our tree. And here we can see that all these other parts are in work. The case assembly is released, and its child parts, they're still in frozen, which, in general practice, we probably want to release these before we release the parent assembly. And you could do that by, creating other change actions against these or going ahead and releasing them ahead of time. But in this case, we just wanted to show the functionality of a change action against the case assembly root and also to highlight the different design states. Another feature I'll show is the product CAD origin within the BI Essentials. And this tool tells us where the parts were originally designed from. So here we can see Darcy's part in red, which came from SOLIDWORKS, and the majority of the assembly we see is this ghosty translucent white material, which was designed in native 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA. And here we can even see a part colored in blue. This was designed in CATIA V5. So using the same connector type software that Darcy used, we're able to use that process and create a V5 part integrated with 3DEXPERIENCE CATIA and build it into a native 3DEXPERIENCE assembly. In case you want to get a hold of either of us for follow-up questions, or to learn more about what we've presented today, feel free to reach out using the contact information we have provided here. Please feel free to sign up for our email newsletter so you can stay up to date on all of our current and new offerings. You'll receive monthly emails informing you on upcoming webinars and events in your area. Find out more about our professional training, including SOLIDWORKS and CATIA. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have thousands of videos on tips and tricks. And don't forget about the GoEngineer customer portal for tech support, serial numbers, and more. Thank you again for attending our webinar, and hope you have an awesome day.